Most people believe that Bigfoot is a myth, a tall tale spun around campfires or a hoax perpetuated by blurry photos. But what if I told you that sometimes the legend isn't just a story? That deep in the forests of Oregon, something lurks, something massive, watching, waiting, something real. A skeptical hunter embarks on a solo trip in the dense Oregon wilderness, convinced that Bigfoot is nothing more than folklore, and a chilling encounter in the dead of night challenges everything he believes about the creature's existence. The experience leaves him questioning reality, changing his perception forever. You think you know what's out there, right? That the world is mapped, documented, and categorized? But what if it isn't? What if some things are deliberately kept out of sight, not by accident, but by design? Ethan Cross was a hunter by trade, a rational man who didn't entertain fairy tales. He spent decades tracking elk, deer, and bear, learning the rhythms of nature in a way few ever could. To him, Bigfoot was an amusing backwoods joke, the kind of nonsense spouted by amateur campers who mistook a grizzly for something more exotic. That was until the night everything changed. Ethan had set up camp near a remote stretch of the Willet National Forest, miles from the nearest road. The air was crisp, and the scent of pine mixed with the smokiness of his small fire. He was preparing for an early morning hunt, his rifle cleaned and ready. As the last embers of the fire smoldered, he stretched out in his tent, listening to the distant howls of wolves and the rustling of the underbrush. Then a new sound. A deep, guttural growl rumbled through the trees, unlike anything he had ever heard. It wasn't the shrill call of a coyote or the familiar snarl of a bear. This was something else, something bigger. The hairs on his arms stood on end as he reached instinctively for his rifle. The growl turned into heavy, deliberate footsteps, thudding against the earth, slow and purposeful. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Whatever was out there was massive. He had hunted grizzlies before, but even their weight didn't create this kind of impact. Then the breathing, heavy, raspy. Just outside his tent, Ethan, heart pounding, slowly unzipped his tent, peering into the darkness. His flashlight caught a glimpse of something enormous, something covered in thick, matted fur. Deep-set eyes reflected the beam back at him. Intelligent, calculating. The creature was at least 8 feet tall, its shoulders impossibly broad, its face eerily human yet unmistakably wild. Before he could move, the thing let out a low, almost mournful moan. Then, as suddenly as it had come, it turned and vanished into the forest, its massive frame swallowed by the trees. Ethan sat frozen, his rational mind at war with what he had just seen. His entire life, he had scoffed at the idea of Bigfoot. Now he couldn't deny it. It was real. It was out there. And it had seen him. The next morning, Ethan found the footprints, deep, enormous impressions in the mud. Not bear tracks, not human. Something else. He followed them for a mile before they simply disappeared, as if the creature had stepped out of existence itself. Ethan packed up his camp and left, but he was never the same. He never told anyone, not really, because who would believe him? A lifelong skeptic turned witness. The irony wasn't lost on him. But in the quiet of the night, when he was alone in his cabin, he would sometimes hear the sound again. A distant growl, deep in the woods. Watching, waiting. Sometimes the things we dismiss as myths persist because they are more real than we dare to admit. Just because something hasn't been proven doesn't mean it isn't true. The world is vast, full of shadows we have yet to illuminate. The next time you find yourself in the deep woods, listen carefully. Watch the tree line. You might just see something watching you back. And if you ever hear a low, guttural growl in the dead of night, run.